This podcast is part of the Everyday Heroes Podcast Network, the network for first responders and those who support them.
And here we are back with Scissors and Scrubs. I'm Nicole.
I'm Laura.
And we are covering some St. Patty's Day. St. Patty's Day. I'm wearing my Irish knit tonight, Laura, from Ireland to cover this specific episode.
Very festive.
Today, we're covering the Irish Famine of 1846. I get the dates all confused.
Several years.
Around there. It was a lot. I deep dove. I couldn't get enough of this story. Mm-hmm. It couldn't be more complicated and convoluted.
Yeah.
So, and political.
Yeah.
It's extremely political.
Yeah.
I don't know how many English listeners we have, but I have to say they don't come out very nice in this story. Yeah. And you can absolutely see why the Irish hate the English in this story. Mm-hmm. So no offense, because I don't think current England is like this, but old England they were assholes. Yeah. Shall we kick it off?
Sure.
All right. So in order to understand why the famine happens, you kind of have to know the history of Ireland. In 1801, you have the Act of Union, which makes Ireland unwillingly part of the United Kingdom.
Yes.
They just kind of fucking took places over. They didn't ask. Yeah. They just were like, you're part of us now. Okay. The British governor appoints Ireland's leaders, and he's called, like, I have it later in the story, like the lead chancellor of Ireland or something. And they were all Protestant English. They're born in Scotland. They're born in England. They're not true-born Irish. Mm-hmm. True-born Irish, most of them are Catholic. 80% of them are hardcore Catholic. Mm-hmm. So, once England takes over Ireland, they pass the penal laws. These are fucking something.
Okay.
So you are imprisoned for practicing Catholicism. You're not allowed to vote. You're not allowed to hold a public office.
If you're Catholic.
Okay. These are all specific to Catholics. You can't marry a Protestant to gain land. Oh. You can't own a horse worth more than 5 pounds. And I don't mean like weighs more than 5 pounds. He can't be worth more than 5 pounds.
So it's pretty much a dead
So you have an old nag.
Yeah,
with like 3 teeth. Okay. You can't. So if you own land, you can't just bequeath it to your son or your daughter. It has to be subdivided. You're not allowed to leave land to whom you love when you choose. Okay. You can't. There's certain jobs you're not allowed to go for, like law. You can't be in any kind of political office. You can't do any kind of law jobs. They hold the Irish Catholics way down. Okay. These are mostly repealed by 1829, but when they were up, I mean, they were severe. I mean, a friend of mine has these rosaries. They're a ring because they were forbidden to practice anything Catholic. So they would practice the rosaries on a ring. You know, it was something. All right. So most of the laws are repealed by 1829, but it's all Catholics are punished by this. Okay. They speak the language of honor, which is Gaelic. Mm-hmm. They were forbidden to speak it at this time too, but you will hear like they would speak it among each other. Mm-hmm. But you couldn't teach it in schools. You couldn't teach Catholicism in schools. You couldn't bring artifacts in from Rome. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy what you could not do. So what happens is the Irish Catholic go to the lower classes, and the Anglo-English, which are either English-born Irish or Irish-born English parents, they wind up running Ireland. Mm-hmm. So the class structure of Ireland, you have 3 classes. You have landowners, landlords. They own huge estates in Ireland, but most live in England. So they own the estates in Ireland, but they live in England. They don't deal with the land. They could give a shit. It falls into disrepair. They don't care. Mm-hmm. They have tenants. There's another word for them. Land agents that collect rents from them. So most of these states are really in bad straits. Mm-hmm. The landlords, they subdivide the estates into farms. 3 or more acres, 30 or more acres, you're a large farmer. 10 to 30 acres, you're a middling farmer. 2 to 10 acres, you're a small farmer. Then under the small farmer are the laborers. They don't even own land. They just go farm to farm to farm, and they labor the land. Mm-hmm. The rents on these farms are ridiculous. Yeah. They are outrageously priced. So what is happening is a lot of the smaller farmers subdivide. So they explain it like you have an apartment house and you get 10 renters. But the rent's so high, each 10 renters subdivide, bring a family in. So now you get 20 renters on one parcel of land trying to pay the rent. And these houses are small and crowded. They said like at one point they'd put a bureau between the house of this one room to make it 2 families. Yeah. And they were Irish Catholic. They have like 15 kids. Yeah. They're really they're a clannish community. They're a superstitious community. They love big families. They're a happy group. So even though they're poor, they're a happy group of people. So now I lost my place, of course. They crawl into these same places. The laborers, they don't have a house at all. And what they would do is they would live in scalps. So they would carve out a hole in the ground, put a thatched roof on it, and live in the hole. Oh my God. You would think it's disgusting. They're free from the wind. They're free from the rain. It was pretty cozy, but they live in like paupers. Like little hovels. Little huts. Like, yeah. Yep. And one guy, like some of them would even do it in the bogs. So one
Oh God, that's what?
One doctor's like, he went to find the patient and they were like, could you get off the roof, please? Because he didn't realize he was standing on the roof of their house. But they say it was pretty cozy and warm. Yeah. 80% of Ireland at this time is Catholic and poor. They have no shoes. Most of them are walking around with no shoes and they're wearing rags. And they're okay with that. They don't mind. So rent is paid 2 times a year called Gale Day, like a gale of wind, Gale Day. You can't pay the rent, you're evicted. It didn't matter. You were out. Even if you could pay the rent, they didn't like you, you're out. And besides working your own piece of land, you had to work the landowner's land as well. So you had to donate 80 days a year to the landowner to pay his rent. Right. There are 32 counties of Ireland at the time, and they had just subdivided into 130 poor union communities. Each one of these has a workhouse. So you have 130 workhouses. If you're in that poor union community, that landowner is paying to keep the workhouse open. Okay. The workhouse, you can enter it voluntarily. It's shameful to go into it. It's kind of like welfare, but you can't leave voluntarily. And if you leave, like say you just walked away and you're wearing their uniform, they could shoot you dead because you're stealing their clothes. They're not nice places. It's basically jail. So that will come into play later why they found it very shameful to go to the workhouses. Most Irish, they would rather die than go into this workhouse. So as I said, the family is large. They're a happy community. They're very superstitious. So a lot of what happens, they blamed on the fairies. They believed in fairies. And the Irish famine killed the fairy, believe it or not, in their community. Fairies, they would leave food out for the fairies because if you didn't leave food out the fairies, they would ruin your crops. If you didn't do this for the fairies, they would destroy this. They weren't cute little fairies. They were nasty little bitches. Yeah. Nasty little bitches. So they have like a hungry month. The hungry months are July and August, and that's all based on the way the potato crops are planted. Okay. New potatoes are planted in the spring, and they're harvested in May. And they're like, you know the potatoes with the really thin skin? That's what they're like. Okay. So they would harvest them, and they would eat them as they came in. They had a thin skin, they don't last long, and they're gone by July. So July and August is when the old potatoes, they're called old potatoes because they have a thicker skin. They last longer. This is what's going to get them through the winter. The older potato wasn't in yet, so they would be hungry. And they were so proud that they would literally go to other communities miles away and beg or dig in their fields and steal food because they didn't want their own community to know that they were that hungry. And even with the potato, so the old potato, the Irish lumper is what they called it, has a thick skin. It's harvested in September and October. It's a sturdy potato. It has a thicker skin. It lasts throughout the winter. Some of the potatoes are put aside for the next year's crops. They're the new seedlings. And you need to know that the Irish ate fucking potatoes every meal. Breakfast potatoes, lunch potatoes, dinner potatoes, snacks potatoes, potatoes. Everybody, the aristocracy is not eating potatoes. They had potato bread, potato soup, like everything is potatoes because it was cheap, easy to grow, and it grew a lot. The aristocracy is eating the wheat and the barley and they're eating the meat. They'd have a pig but the pig usually got sold to pay the rent. So they're eating like chickens, they're eating eggs, but they're not eating much more than fucking potatoes. So the farmers, they are growing wheats and other grains to pay the rent. So they will come in on gale day, and if you can't pay the rent, they collect everything off your land, and that's how you're going to pay the rent. They tend livestock. They're not allowed to eat them. They are only allowed to eat potatoes. So everything they collect goes back to England. So potatoes themselves, according to WebMD, they're a great source of fiber. They keep cholesterol and blood sugars down, which surprised me because I thought potatoes make your sugars go up.
Yeah, that is weird. Like starch makes your sugar go up. Yeah.
But they say that keeps it in check. They're full of antioxidants that fight free radicals. They deliver over 40% of vitamin C, half the vitamins B5 you need for the day. They have more potassium in them than a banana.
Wow.
They're high in calories. They have 6 grams of protein, 4 grams of fiber, and 5 grams of sugar.
Wow.
So because the Irish are eating so many potatoes, they're actually bigger than the English, stronger than the English, and healthier than the English. So take it away with your potato info.
Okay.
What happens when these don't?
So I'm going to go over vitamin deficiencies. Yes. Okay. So, like she just said, these potatoes are high in vitamin C, vitamin A,
they're high in vitamins.
They're high in vitamins. They're actually, it doesn't sound right, but they're actually good for you.
I mean, if this is the only staple of your diet, a potato's not that bad.
Right. Who knew? I'm going to live forever.
I'm all over the French fries at McDonald's. I can't wait.
So I'm going to go over a couple of vitamin deficiencies and what happens when you do not have these vitamins in your diet. Vitamin C deficiency, otherwise known as
scurvy.
It's the scurvy.
I got the scurvy.
Yeah. Is a big problem. Pirates used to have it a lot.
Yes.
So the signs and symptoms of scurvy are weakness, fatigue, sore limbs, gum disease, easy bleeding, myalgia, roughness of skin, petechiae, which is like those little teeny dots you get from like bruising.
Like if somebody strangled you, you'd have petechiae in your eyes.
Poor wound healing, and corkscrew hairs. Which I feel is the worst.
You know what? I wouldn't mind that because then I'd have curly hair because right now mine's
it'll be like those hard, weird, bristly hairs that
and they'd come out of my chin and out my hair.
Grow out in the middle of your face probably. And if it's left untreated, if you go without vitamin C for a long time and do not treat it, you will get iron deficiency anemia, bleeding from the skin, you will lose your teeth, you will get gum disease, you will get personality changes, and you can die from the bleeding that will occur within your body.
Eesh.
Yeah.
That's rough shit.
Yeah. So that is vitamin C deficiency. You need vitamin C.
Yeah, period.
Yep.
You don't want to be a scurvy dog.
No. Vitamin A deficiency is another completely different problem. Vitamin A is good for proper vision, your strong immune system, your reproduction system, and healthy skin. Signs and symptoms of a vitamin A deficiency are dry skin, dry eyes. Dry eyes is usually the first sign that you have a vitamin A deficiency. You cannot make tears if you don't have vitamin A.
That's not good.
Yep.
No.
And that can lead to, I don't know how they say this, Bitots spots. And your cornea is dying and becoming completely blind.
Oh, that's disgusting.
If it's left untreated.
Ew.
You can get night blindness, infertility issues in men and women, delayed growth in children, throat and chest infections, poor wound healing because vitamin A promotes collagen creation, and acne and breakouts. So you need your vitamin A for your sight, for your immune system,
for your skin,
to help you grow, to help prevent throat and chest infections. And then there's iron deficiency, which we all know, iron deficiency anemia. Anemia is when the blood lacks adequate healthy red blood cells which carry oxygen through your body. So that's anemia. So iron deficiency anemia is due to a lack of iron in your blood. And without iron, you can't produce hemoglobin, which is what makes your red blood cells carry O2.
Right.
So your hemoglobin is what binds the oxygen to your red blood cells. So signs and symptoms of iron deficiency anemia are extreme fatigue, weakness, pale skin, chest pain, shortness of breath, irregular heartbeats, headache, dizziness, lightheadedness, cold hands and feet, inflammation or soreness of your tongue, which sounds gross.
Anything to do with your tongue is disgusting.
Brittle nails, pica. Pica is when you want
to weird shit.
Yeah, like you crave like things
Clay
that are inedible.
and,
Clay,
charcoal.
dirt, charcoal, like weird
shit
that you wouldn't normally eat. I know my aunts had pica when they were pregnant, a few of them, and they wanted this soap. They would carry around this bar of soap. I forget. It was like a red bar of soap. They wouldn't eat it, but they would smell, like they wanted to eat it. So they would carry it around and like smell it all the time because they
weird.
Really, like they just wanted to eat it because they had
pica's common among pregnant
women. Yeah. That's when they would have it. You get a poor appetite. Complications of iron deficiency anemia are you get heart problems, you get an irregular heartbeat or an enlarged heart with heart failure because your heart has to pump more because your blood cells aren't carrying that oxygen. So it's pumping more to try to get oxygen. It can lead to premature births and low birth weight babies. And it can lead to delayed growth and development in infants and children. And you are more susceptible to infections.
Which is a big problem.
Yeah. And that's it for like the vitamin.
Okay. So in steps, well, we're going to start with 1844.
Okay.
Because 1844, they have a bumper crop of potatoes. There's so many fucking potatoes, they don't know what to do with them. They're leaving in the ditches. They're rotting. They are inundated with potatoes. There's so many fucking potatoes in 1844.
Those fairies were well fed that
Those fairies were very happy in 1844. 1845, not so much.
Oh boy.
So the new potatoes are harvested in the spring. No problem. There's some reports that there's a quote-unquote blight being seen in the western part of Ireland, but nobody's really concerned. They just think it's the fairies being pissed. Potato blight is a disease of potatoes and tomatoes. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know it was tomatoes.
Oh, it covers the tomatoes too. So maybe that's why all the Italians came in later.
Right.
It's caused by a water mold called, oh my God, Phytophthora infestant. It is in humid areas. It likes wet.
Yeah.
And what is Ireland?
Wet.
Very fucking
Very
wet.
Yeah.
Hot, dry weather keeps it away. So the summer of that year had been very hot and very dry, unusually hot. When a plant becomes infested, you'll see dark green or purplish black lesions will appear on the potato leaves and the stem.
Okay.
Under the leaves is a whitish growth that we will release. It's a fungus.
Yeah.
And it'll release spores. It loves to release spores when it rains, and it will release them on the wind.
Nice.
Okay, what is Ireland?
Very windy.
Fucking wet
very
and
rainy.
windy.
Yeah.
Okay? The potato tuber, which is the potato, it will be like if you get this fungus on it and you pull the potato out, it's going to look shrunken and it's black. The outside, it's rotted and visible. They can be black and slimy. So if it rains and this fungus is on the leaf, it's washing it into the ground, and then this fungus hits the potato and makes it disgustingly brown, black, slimy. And the wind will set the spores for fucking miles.
Oh.
So this is how it's going to cover large quantities of land in a very, very short time. They can also infect. So even though they've harvested new potatoes, it can hit the potatoes they will bury ditches, and they bury the potatoes in the ditch to keep them while they're eating them. It can get into that ditch and rot your potatoes.
Ew.
So in 1845, August of 1845, blight is first seen by some farmers on their crops. October of 1845, this huge rainstorm comes in, like people have never seen before. They think the fairies are angry because they left all these potatoes in the ditches and everything, and it's like black, it's pouring rain, it's a horrible, horrible storm. The next morning, the entire island of Ireland smells like shit. It smells like decay and rotten potatoes. So a third of the total potato crop is gone due to blight. And the farmers start looking, they're like, oh, my potatoes in the pits are fine. And they look in, they're fucking all rotted too. Now there's a panic because this is all about 80% of Ireland eats. So the English Parliament, they have a policy of laissez-faire policy. Laissez-faire is a policy of minimum governmental interference to the economic affairs of individuals and society. In other words, even though most of Ireland is now going to starve, the government's like, leave it alone, not my problem. Yeah. That happened to them. You leave it alone because it'll affect the markets. They're all about fucking money. Mm-hmm. So in November of 1845, Prime Minister Peel, Robert Peel in the potato famine. Peel, potatoes.
Yeah, Peel, yeah.
A little coincidental. Mm. He wants to help. He does feel bad for the Irish. So December of 1845, because of this famine, food prices double. So these people are already fucking poor. You think they're going to pay double the food prices for anything in there? Right. So they can't afford it. And all of the crops are still being shipped out of Ireland to England. The United Kingdom has corn laws, which have nothing to do with corn. Mm-hmm. Corn laws in England refer to all grains, wheats, oats, and barley. And it's designed to keep the prices of those grains high so that the people who grow them will make money. Mm-hmm. If you import the American grains, which we have buckets full, mm-hmm. it'll lower the prices and it'll hurt the farmers, and they don't fucking want that. So they block an import of any grains from other countries like the U.S. to keep these prices at a good level. Mm-hmm. This also helps enhance the profit and political power of English aristocracy. Right. So Robert Peel's like, I really want to get rid of these laws. They're bullshit. Mm-hmm. But nobody's going to let him get rid of these laws. So he comes up with this plan, and he's like, well, if we import corn from the United States, technically it's not part of the corn law because it's not corn, yeah. So he decides to start shipping in massive amounts of corn to Ireland mm-hmm. to aid in relief. Problem is, there's only 2 mills in the entire country of Ireland that know how to mill corn. So all these random farmers who still have to pay for the cornmeal, even though it's cheaper, they have to pay for it. They're not giving it. Mm-hmm. They have to pay for cornmeal. They're starting to take it, but they don't know what the fuck to do with it. Mm-hmm. So they're eating it very raw. Ew. And it's puncturing their colons and causing intestinal problems. So they're ending up with bloody diarrhea mm-hmm. and major, major GI issues. So they, to top it off, they have to pay for it. Even though it's cheaper grain, they still have to pay for it. And they are pawning anything and everything to pay for this corn. Mm-hmm. So if they were fishermen, they've pawned all their nets and hooks. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to be able to fish. Right. If they're farmers, they've pawned all their equipment so they can't farm. Like mm-hmm. if you have clothes, anything you have, you fucking pawned to pay for cornmeal you can't eat. Yeah. So by December of 1845, 86,900 people have died of starvation already. Mm-hmm. In March of 1846, Peel adds public works jobs. So he is just creating jobs so they can make money to pay for the cornmeal, building roads, building bridges, building anything he can think of. They mm-hmm. literally built roads to nowhere to help pay for these people. So thousands of people are showing up for work, but they're showing up, they're starving. They have no shoes, they have no clothes, they're barely able to breathe, but they're working 12-hour days. And if you so much as made one fucking mistake, you were gone, somebody else was mm-hmm. in your place. And they're waiting for money, but the bureaucracy is so bad they may not get paid for weeks. Right. So they're still starving no matter what, no matter how much money they're putting in for this. So by June of 1846, Peel is able to get these corn laws repealed, but it costs him his office. So out he goes, and he's replaced by this piece of shit, Prime Minister Russell. He's a real piece of shit. He's really into the English. He's really into the Irish suck, and English is great, and mm-hmm. we're better than everybody. So by July of 1846, I think I'm in the right year, it looks like the crops are going to be okay, so Russell stops the import of all corn and shuts down relief committees and the public works jobs to end at the end of August. Oh, good. By August of 1846, the blight is back. 3/4 of the crops are destroyed. This starts a massive emigration to the U.S., Canada, and Australia. Mm-hmm. By November of 1846, an abnormally harsh winter sets in. Now you're seeing scurvy, dysentery, fevers. Mm-hmm. They're epidemic across the country. Some landlords find it cheaper to actually pay tickets to emigrate them to the United States or to to Australia or to Canada. Mm-hmm. One of the hardest hit towns was Skibbereen. They lost 1/3 of their population. And one of the reporters describes he walks into Skibbereen, and you walk by the shops, they're full of vegetables and corn and breads and all this shit. Mm-hmm. But you go to the homes and there's skeletons. These people are starved. They can't even get out of the corner of the hut to come over and greet you. And he describes having this bizarre conversation with these two sisters who are ticking off the days they have left. Okay, we're not eating, so 14 days and we'll be dead. And he's like, it was bizarre. They are hit so bad, they make international news. And by the end of 1846, there were 899,000 deaths. Did you want to talk about the fevers and the starvation
what
and everything?
Does.
Okay,
sure. I'll go over starvation first.
Okay,
because I think it helps to
because
know
this is only 1 year in, and this lasts for many years.
Right, and to know that these people are doing all this work while they have this going on in their systems is unreal. This is why they can't get out of the corners of their houses.
Right.
So starvation, as a definition, is a severe deficiency in caloric energy intake needed to maintain human life. Starvation is the most extreme form of malnutrition. Prolonged starvation can cause organ damage and death. Starvation's a process. It's not like, I'm starving. Like, no, it's
weeks and months.
Long process. It's a terrible, terrible long process. When the body recognizes that food is scarce, it reallocates its resources to keep the body going until you get food. So it, after a couple, even when you're just fasting, like people fast.
Yeah, and I hate it.
Right. But even when you do that, your body's like, okay, so what's going on? So I'm going to burn some of this fat. And that's why people fast, to burn their fat and use up that. Your body immediately will be like, okay, I haven't eaten in a few hours. I haven't eaten in a day. I haven't eaten in 2 days.
I'm going to hit the ass.
Right. So your body is smart and knows I have to use some of the stuff I have inside until I can get food again. So it keeps you going for a little bit. Starvation consists of 3 phases. The first phase, the blood glucose levels are maintained by your body turning proteins, glycogens, and fats into glucose. So first, glycogen, which is stored in your liver, is broken down to glucose. But there's only enough glycogen in your liver to keep your glucose levels, for a couple hours.
Oh, okay.
That's it. It's not like you're going to go days with the stuff stored in your liver. It's a few hours.
Not my liver.
No. After the glycogen is used up, fats are broken down into glycerol and fatty acids. Fatty acids can be used as a source of energy, especially by your skeletal muscles. So your skeletal muscles are using up those fatty acids, so your brain can still use any glucose that's going, because your brain needs
more
glucose.
Important than your brain, your heart, more important than everything.
Glycerol is broken down to make a small amount of glucose. And that's going to go to your brain because your brain needs that. But most of the glucose comes from amino acids of protein when that is broken down. So we're doing little fatty acids. We're breaking down some fat. You're getting a little something, but it's not enough. The second phase may last for several weeks. Fats become the main energy source because you've done all these little things that you can do, like the fatty acids and the glycol and all that stuff. Your body's used all that. Your liver metabolizes fatty acids into ketone bodies that are used for energy. After about a week of inadequate food, your brain starts using ketone bodies for energy. This is not good. They should not be using this. They need straight up glucose. You're going to feel cold. You're going to be hypersensitive to noise and lights. Your gums are going to swell and bleed. You're going to have a decreased libido because you're starving while you're having
sex. Who's thinking about sex?
I don't know.
You're starving to death.
You're going to have mood changes. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be irritable. You're going to be angry. When you get hangry, this is 18,000 times worse. Your brain is not getting what it needs to be functioning properly. You're starting to lose it. And then in the third phase, that starts when a person's fat reserves are all used up. So you used every fat reserve in your body left.
Skeleton.
Yep. And your body switches to protein for its energy source. This is the beginning of the end. You are now breaking down your muscles to maintain life. Muscles are very quickly broken down. It happens quickly once you get to this. Once it starts, it happens quickly. At the end of phase 3, proteins that your cells need to function are completely depleted and cell function degenerates. You're not living anymore. You will lose weight. You become apathetic. You withdraw. You become listless. And are obviously way more susceptible to infectious diseases.
And this is exactly how they explained what all the people in Skibbereen were like.
Right. And they, like, even when you said, like, and they were listless, apathetic, like, yeah, okay, I got 14 days to live. They're completely apathetic because their brain is not functioning at a level that you're like, shit, I got 14 days. Like, it's, they're like, whatever. Like, because your brain is not functioning correctly anymore.
They're laying in their own filth just waiting for death to come.
Yep. Other signs of starvation are flaky skin, edema of the lower limbs and abdomen, changes in hair color, hair loss. Your ability to eat decreases. Mm-hmm. So even if someone gave you something, you're like, yeah, I can't eat that. Like, you can have it's
too much.
You like don't want to eat anymore. Mm-hmm. And you become dehydrated, obviously. Your teeth just decay and fall out. Your bones are weakened. You can't move. You can't walk. Your muscles are gone. Your bones are weak. Like,
it's a mess. You're a mess.
Starvation obviously ruins your immune system. Most starving people die of infectious disease before actual starvation kills them. But you only have so much fat, glucose, and muscle, and eventually you will die because you will use it all. However, usually an infectious disease gets you first. Mm-hmm. At the end of starvation, there's 2 diseases that are common. I'm not going to say either of these right. Marasmus. It happens due to extreme energy deficiency. Your body weight is dangerously low and your rate of infection is sky high. So you're just going to get any infection that's coming towards you. And then there's, I'm definitely not saying this right, kwashiorkor? Kwashiorkor. It affects
kwashiorkor.
Yeah.
Okay.
It affects children who are very low in protein. These are the kids that you see, you know,
big bellies.
Yes, when you see the kids like in those commercials for the
flies
starving kids in Africa. And, they have edema and fatty liver, which makes their abdomen hugely distended, which makes them look, they're eating fine. Yeah. They have tons to eat. No, it's their liver and edema that is filling that abdomen up. And then they can't eat because their stomach is squished down. And that, when a person does die of starvation, it is usually caused by a heart attack or an arrhythmia caused by electrolyte imbalances. Or by extreme tissue degeneration. When your tissues are breaking down, like if an elderly person falls at home and they've been laying on the floor, your tissues stop breaking down.
They get sick.
You get wicked septic. You go into shock and you die. So you die from either one of those.
Right.
People can die of starvation in as little as 3 weeks, or they can starve for as long as 70 days.
Well, I think it goes to show the fighting spirit of these Irish. Mm-hmm. They went for years like this. Yeah. Fucking years.
They must have had enough that it was like just enough to get them
through.
They
say at one point the kids' faces were stained with green grass because they were eating grass. Anything they could get. They would go at night and scavenge in people's fields trying to dig up cabbages and turnip. Anything they could fucking find.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Yeah. It's a terrible way to be.
So we're going into January.
Okay.
1847.
Okay.
The British Relief Association forms. The British Relief Association. They decide they're going to come up with the Soup Kitchen Act. Oh. They're going to put out a bunch of fucking soup kitchens because this is going to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. And they're going to open up to feed the hungry, but they're not going to open up till July. This is January. They're not going to open up till July.
Good idea. And those months aren't hard.
Right. By this point, there are 714,000 people trying to find these public work jobs. They're all in public work jobs, trying to make money. But again, they're not paying them.
Right.
Word has gone out about this Irish famine, and countries from all over the world trying to donate. Mm-hmm. Queen Victoria, God bless her heart. She donates $2,000 out of her pocket, which would be today's money. You would think, oh wow, right? Yeah. The Shah of Turkey, in today's money, wants to give $10 million. But he's told, you can't give more than the Queen gave because that's insulting. So nobody is allowed to donate more than $2,000 to the Irish Relief Fund. Do you know what $10 million would have done for the fucking Irish? Right. But no, that would be insulting to the Queen.
Oh my God.
Fuck her. So even the Choctaw tribe, which was the Trail of Tears tribe, they can relate to the hunger from the Trail. They come up with like $129 and they donate it. Mm-hmm. Like, people from all over the world are donating money because they can't believe how bad it is over there. Mm-hmm. I mean, at this point, the Queen Victoria is about 30 years old. She already has 6 fucking kids. God bless her. And she could give a shit. about the Irish. When you watch the show Victoria, she comes off so sympathetic to the Irish plight, and I want to help them. When you read accounts of her, she really didn't give a shit. Yeah. She was like, oh, whatever. Yeah, they're hungry. God bless. They deserve it. They should work harder. They should have less kids. Whatever. This is from the fucking woman who had 9 kids. Yeah. By April of 1847, the Fever Act is put through to relieve the overcrowded hospitals. At this point, fuck pride. The Irish are going in droves to the workhouses looking for food, clothing, and relief. The workhouses are doubling and tripling in size. They can't maintain the amount of people coming in. And as they come in, they're bringing in all this disease. So the workhouses are rampant with disease by this point. And finally, in July of 1847, the soup kitchens open. They are serving 3 million people a day. Wow. A day in these soup kitchens, okay? And what is happening is supers, quote unquote, supers are coming out. What is a super? I don't know. Let me tell you, Laura, what a super is. A super is a Protestant who sets up a tent and cooks a delicious stew to serve 80 people. He's got fresh clothing and everything. He tells you, come on in. You can eat soup and have fresh clothing if you renounce the Catholic religion, become a Protestant.
Oh, my God.
Some of them are like, go fuck yourself. I'd rather starve to death. That's how devout they are. Others are like, sure. And they eat the soup. They take the clothes. They go to a Protestant, I don't even know what Protestants call their ceremonies, mass, whatever. Yeah. And then they go to the Catholic Church in their brand new clothes and they go down there. Finally, some of the Protestants were like, forget it. Other ones were just real fucking pieces of shit about it.
That's a real Christian thing to do.
They're real Christian. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, but you have to convert to my... I mean, it's just unbelievable. And what's even more unbelievable is they're so Catholic, they would rather starve to death than do this. In this year, you also have the Poor Law Act, or the Quarter Acre Act. This clause forbids relief to any household head who he holds more than a quarter acre of land and refuses to give it back to the landlord. So you have a quarter acre of land, you've been tilling it, you've been doing it, you paid your rents and everything, but he wants it back, you refuse to give it. You're not getting any relief for your starvation. That's what this means. And this leads to massive evictions. They don't just say, get the fuck out of the house. They go into the house with crowbars and flames and they burn it to the ground so you can't go back and inhabit it. That's lovely. Do you remember when we were in Ireland and we went to all the churches and they had no roofs? Yeah. Because they had the roof tax. So they just fucking took the roof off. This is what all these laws are like. They're going to find a way around the law. All right. So now you have starvation, horrible winter, and people are living in ditches because they have no homes, because the landlords have evicted them, because it's cheaper to evict them and get them off their fucking land than try to help these people. It's lovely. Okay. August of 47, there's not much blight in the, but it is not enough to feed the problem they have created. By October of 47, they close all the soup kitchens.
Oh, well, there was no blight, so it's fine.
Yeah. They're going to close them all because you're feeding 3 million a day. We can't keep that up. That's bullshit. Let's close them. December of 1847, at this point, the farmers are stealing so even though these people are starving to death, the production of exports out of Ireland has actually increased.
When I was reading this stuff, I was like, I don't understand. But they're exporting a shit ton of food.
All the food is leaving Ireland, vegetables. Even though the Irish are starving. That's how much they didn't give a shit about their own people. Yeah. And like I said, you would go into town and all the stores have food, but nobody can fucking buy it. And everybody around you is in rags, skeletons, scurvy, typhoid, and you are holding on to your fucking food. What human does that to another human? I can't believe it. Excuse me. So, you're seeing peas, beans, rabbits, fish, honey, all be exported out of Ireland. And like I said, it's increased at this time. They can't believe it, but they actually increased the exports in the time of starvation. So now what do they have to do? Because what people are doing is they're raiding the carts of food that are leaving town. They're blockading the ships from leaving. They're stealing the food. So let's pass the crime and outrage law pass. It gives the Lord Ultimate, that's the name of the guy, the Lord Ultimate of Ireland, the power to organize the island into districts and bring police in to fix all these problems. So and it's passed because they're also concerned there's going to be a fucking revolt.
Wow. They are starving to
Right. So what you don't know is the blight in Ireland did not just hit Ireland. It hit almost all of Europe. This potato blight had hit the United States. It had hit Denmark. And so what had happened is these countries that hit on mainland Europe overthrew their governments and became no longer were monarchs. They changed their governments because of the blight. England's shit in their pants. The fucking Irish, who are starving to death, are going to rise up and take over and get their country back.
It would take a strong wind to blow them
over. Exactly. But you know what? They fucking try because they're Irish. They got the fighting Irish. All right. So some revolutionists in Ireland, they've gone to France to see what France did for their revolutions. Because actually last night I was watching something with Cameron. They have the French Revolution in the 1700s. Napoleon comes into power. They overthrow Napoleon. They put the king back in power. After that fucking revolution, they go through 3 different revolutions to change the state of France. Yeah. So they go in to see, you got 3 revolutions. How are you doing it?
Right.
So they go down to see what's going on. And this is where the Irish flag comes up. It's based after the French flag. You have the green for the Irish Catholics. You have the orange for the Protestant Catholics. Protestant Irish. And you have the white for the truce. I was fascinated by that tidbit of information. Okay. So by the end of 1847, 220,000 have emigrated from the United States. 249,335 have died. This becomes known as Black 47. Netflix has a movie called Black 47.
Ooh, really?
And it is about an Irish soldier who fought for England, and he comes back in 1847. His family has died of starvation. He watches his sister get kicked out of her home and evicted and freeze to death, and he fucking launches holy hell on the English. It's very, very good. And having read this, the movie makes more sense. I almost want to watch it again. Very, very good. April 1848. Treason Felony Act is passed.
Oh, boy.
Again, to deal with uprisings, because you have the young Irish that are starting to... There's a guy, I think his name is Daniel O'Connell. He's starting to stir shit up. This is ridiculous, blah, 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 blah. July 1848, 2/3 of the crops have failed due to blight.
Oh, my God.
And the British Association Relief Fund has dried up. There's no more money. The workhouses can't handle anymore. And people, at this point, people are committing crimes to get shipped to Australia.
Yeah, because it's better.
Because it's better. At one point, they're like, 2 women hit a police officer with a chair. And the judge is like, forget it. And they're like, if you do not ship us to Australia, we're going to fucking beat the shit out of him again. And he's like, all right, off to Australia you go. And Australia is all men. So they, at this point, are taking any woman between the ages of 14 and 18 that will volunteer to go to Australia to populate. Because they need, so over the course of these years, 3,300 women volunteer to go to Australia on the penal colonies just to get the fuck out of Ireland. In July, there's like a small one-day uprising by the young Irish, and it takes place, but they get... they're fucking starving to death. They have pitchforks. They're not allowed guns. It doesn't do much.
Yeah.
Because of this one-day uprising, in September of 1848, England's like, well, fuck you, you ungrateful pieces of shit. We're going to dry up all the relief to Ireland. You brought this on yourselves. Oh. So every piece of relief or anything is pulled out, and the poor laws are even ramped up more. So even more evictions are coming now. So in November of 1848, cholera hits. On top of everything else, we have the cholera epidemic. In 1848, December, 208,252 deaths. And 180,000 have emigrated out of Ireland. June 1849, the last of any. So the Quakers were the only ones left at this point. There was a whole segment of the Quakers of Ireland trying to help. They're fucking done. They can't do it anymore. They're gone. And there's a whole story how if the Queen is finally... All this time, the Queen has ignored Ireland. It's like 5 years. She's ignored Ireland. 1849, she's going to do a grand visit. And literally all the aristocracy goes around, fucking paints buildings, shoos all the starving people into the countryside. Grand event. Queen Victoria and her fucking 6 kids and her piece of shit husband are all coming over to see Ireland. God bless. Behind all of this, there's a total of 686 families being evicted. while this is all going on. And another 220,000 are emigrating, and 240,797 die by December of 1849. 1850, 164,093 deaths, and 210,000 people emigrate. By 1851, Ireland is starting to recover, but before the Irish famine, 8 million people lived in Ireland. You couldn't find a spot of land. There's so many people. By the time it's done, there's 4 million left.
Yeah.
Do you want to finish up? Or do you have more?
The diseases?
Yes.
Yeah.
The diseases that we talked about. And then I want to talk about some of the ships because these diseases ended up on the ships.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the immigration to the different countries. Go ahead.
Okay. So starvation itself only accounted for about 10 to 15% of the deaths in Ireland. The susceptibility to infection caused about 50% of deaths. And depression accounted for a ton of other
despair.
Deaths. Yep. And like we said, all those vitamin deficiencies in the starvation causes mental illness. During the famine, they were fevers, quote unquote, fevers. Those are now known to be typhoid, typhus, relapsing fever, cholera, smallpox, and other respiratory illnesses. People also got extremely ill from eating rotten food.
Yes,
because they would
eat the rotten
desperate.
potatoes.
They would eat anything rotten they would find on the street. They would eat it. So they were getting tons of like diarrheal diseases.
Parasitic shit.
So you have this person who's already starving. They're already dehydrated. And then you give them a parasite or something from rotten food and they're having diarrhea. They're dying from the diarrhea itself. They're already malnourished and now they're, whatever's in them is coming out their butt.
Yeah. They're losing whatever little they had left.
Right. So I had this about the ships, but I guess I'll wait.
No, you talk about
it was just a little blurb. 1.3 million people emigrated from Ireland between 1846 and 1852, mostly to the U.S., Britain, and Australia. The passage was brutal, obviously. These people are starving. They're malnourished. They're on these ships. There's 8,000 of them on the ship.
Because they would oversell these ships. So if the ship only held like 100, these poor immigrants would be packed in 200.
Right.
They would sell them fake tickets. It was awful.
And they're on top of each other, just like at the workhouses.
And they're peasants, so they don't know any better.
Right.
So it was a mess.
And they just want to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, it's a fucking disaster.
Yeah. They're called coffin ships because the mortality rate was between 5 and 30%, mostly from infectious diseases.
Because it goes right on them with the ship, and now you're fucking packed in.
Right, and then you're all like sardines. So the infectious diseases that were around them, we have talked about them before, but I'll go over just a little blurb.
What? Every time we talk about disaster, the twins show up.
Typhus and typhoid?
They love to be there. They wouldn't miss a party.
No. So typhus is an infectious disease that is characterized by a purple rash, headache, fever, and delirium. It's usually transmitted by lice, ticks, mites, and rat fleas. So when they're all going on this public works and going to live in these houses with 8,000 people, there's fleas and,
not
ticks
clean
and
because
there's nothing to wash with.
Right.
So typhus is going to spread when you have that many people packed in somewhere.
And typhus brings her sister every time.
Typhoid. That's a bacterial disease that spreads through contaminated food or water. Symptoms are high fever, headache, belly pain, and constipation or diarrhea. So these malnourished people, again, are shitting themselves. Then there's relapsing fever, which is a bacterial infection spread by ticks, louse, or hard ticks. It causes...
You louse.
It causes recurring fevers, headache, muscle and joint aches, and nausea. There's cholera. Is a bacterial disease.
Cholera's like the king.
Yeah.
Like if we had a hierarchy, he'd be a duke.
Yeah, cholera is pretty high up. Yeah. It's a bacterial disease that causes severe diarrhea and dehydration. It's usually spread by drinking contaminated water. It's fatal if not treated right away.
Yeah.
It has to be treated right away.
And then you're on a ship for like 3 fucking months.
Right, with nothing to clean. So this one's got cholera. He's shitting himself. It's going into your water. You're drinking it and you're getting cholera. Yep. Everybody's getting cholera.
And you're crammed into this little space.
Right. Yep. And then there's smallpox. It's an extremely contagious virus spread by airborne droplets, which cough, sneeze, laugh, whatever. Saliva. You can get it skin to skin, like from handshakes or hugs.
We've talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
But
The first symptoms appear 10 to 14 days after you're infected. The incubation occurs between day 7 and 17. You look and feel healthy during incubation, and you're not contagious.
Right.
Thank God. Then you get a fever, overall discomfort, a headache, severe fatigue, severe back pain, and vomiting. Then flat red spots appear first on your face, hands, and forearms, then your trunk. A couple days later, they blister with clear fluid.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
A couple days later, that turns into pus.
Oh, even prettier.
Yep. And then scabs form about 8 to 9 days later from that. So you just got pus oozing out of you for 8 to 9 days.
Stunning specimen.
Yeah. And then the scabs fall off, leaving huge pitted scars.
Oh,
so
lovely.
It was disfiguring if you survived it.
God forbid you got that on the way to Australia when they were looking for a new bride. She gets off. She's all pussy and shit, scabbed.
Most people
Bloody
survive,
diarrhea.
right, unless they are pregnant or have impaired immune systems, which the Irish had impaired immune systems because of the starvation they were dealing with. Yeah, I'm probably pregnant. And that's all I have on those diseases.
Well, you know what was interesting too is when the Irish got here. Mm-hmm. So you had Irish that were established here already. Mm-hmm. They looked down on the new Irish coming in. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't find jobs. They were put into like ghettos and they're landing in big cities. I mean, there's stories of them coming into Canada first, and that they were coming on through the St. Lawrence Seaway, and there were multiple ships just waiting weeks to unload their passengers. And I read this book called Black Potatoes by Susan Campbell Bartoletti, which is, you know, the Irish and the Italian. Yeah. We're all in the same plight, so we all fucking married each other. I'm a Irish-Italian combo. She was talking about a man who I forgot how he ends up here first, and his family comes over in one of these coffin ships, and it's a sick ship, and he's waiting. He winds up getting a rowboat, going out, getting them off the ship, hiding them on his rowboat, and getting them back to Canada. And then they came through Canada to the United States. They end up in Boston. They end up in New York. Yeah. They end up in Chicago, which is the biggest Irish populations you can find in the United States. But they were shunned. You couldn't find work. You couldn't find jobs. So they built our railroads. They built our roads. When the Irish first got here, they built the United States. So if you watch The Gangs of New York, I haven't watched this movie.
The Gangs of New York.
But they talk about the Bowery Boys versus another gang. That was the old Irish versus the new Irish. And they were fighting for territory because a lot of these poor women coming from starvation become prostitutes in the United States. Right. It was terrible. So they didn't really find it much better here, but they persevered and they took over government, police, and fire. Everything. I mean, being in Boston, everybody's a mix something in the fire department and police department, or at least was. So, and you finished with whatever you have. Okay. So basically, by the end of the Irish famine, you have 2 million died and 2 million emigrated to the different countries. The Irish population has never recovered from the Irish famine, which I find
it's crazy,
unfucking believable. They have never seen the numbers they had before the Irish famine. So I got a lot of my information. I read that book, Black Potatoes. It's like a kid's book, but it was fascinating. Fucking fascinating.
Those little kids' books pack so much information.
They do. And I also watched some stupid YouTube series, and it was all cartoons. But it explained it in a way that I could...
I get it. Yeah.
This is a very difficult story to tell because the politics and the starvation was created because of these potatoes, but the famine was created by the policies. Yes. These people did not have to starve to death. England just fucked them over every chance they got with these laws. I hate to say it. I'm sure you don't like that today, but it took them...
I think like Tony Blair or somebody... apologized. And people were bullshit that he apologized, but he's like, but they were wrong. They were wrong. You know,
they were wrong. And you're talking, it is until the 1920s that they finally kind of win independence because the Northern Ireland still fucking belongs to the English. They will not let them go. Right. It's their last stronghold. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And I also got information from the Irish Potato Famine of History.com.
I got mine from disabledworld.com, livestrong.com, healthline.com, mayoclinic.com, and history.com.
Well, I have to say, I'm glad we covered it because it is a fascinating
It is very interesting.
And
I couldn't get over that they were an exporting country. Yeah. While the whole country was starving. Like,
ramped it up.
Can't get
They ramped it up while these people are starving to death. And you know what? I always thought about it because if you go to downtown Boston, there is an Irish Famine statue.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you always hear about it. You're like, oh, the famine. You don't really think about it. It shaped the United States.
Yeah.
Because all those people came here. You're talking 2 million people influx into the United States. Yeah. That's a big fucking deal.
So that's why a lot of this area has the Celtic gene, which is why people survived the famine.
Oh, tell me about that Celtic gene, Laura. Does it make you beautiful?
I mean, obviously, because I have it.
Stunning.
Yeah. The Celtic gene is it's hemochromatosis is the disease that you get from the Celtic gene.
Hemochromatosis.
Yeah. So a little after the famine in 1865, a fatal disorder that affected the liver and pancreas and that bronzed the skin, which is odd.
Is that why you have that lovely
for
chin?
Celtic descent? Was initially written about. So 1865, kind of right after the plague. They found these people had an excess of iron in their blood. Many explanations for the excess of iron were given, like you drink too much alcohol.
Oh God, these poor.
You have a ton of infections. Well, you just survived potatoes. Famine.
Yeah.
And you eat too much iron. You have way too much iron in your diet.
Oh yeah, and the potatoes.
Yeah. So those were believed until 1935. That was like what people thought these people were dying of. When a British physician discovered the cause was an inborn error of the metabolism of iron within the body. So your body absorbs extra iron and stores it in your organs. So you have iron in your blood. Your body, if you have hemochromatosis, takes this iron out of your blood and puts it into organs in your body. Oh. And it stores it there.
Just in case you might never get potatoes again.
So, to diagnose hemochromatosis, they had to measure the iron content of tissue specimens from a liver biopsy. So, back in the early 1900s, you had to have a liver biopsy to see if this is what you had. And when you went for it, you were already sick. You were already like very sick. You had cirrhosis and all this stuff. So, in 1960, they make a blood test that could measure iron levels in the blood that could mirror the iron that's stored in your tissue. So they could see just by drawing your blood how much you have in your tissues. So it makes it much easier to test for this disease. But again, this was only done on people who already were exhibiting signs of the disease and had damage to internal organs. The iron from hemochromatosis is most commonly stored in the liver, pancreas, heart, and brain. It's also stored in like your joints. People being tested already had cirrhosis, diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, impotence, and liver cancer.
Impotence?
Yeah.
Oof.
It can get into your
pretty bad.
other organs too. And
the organ.
Yeah. Well, you know what it does? It inhibits hormones.
All right. God bless me. I wouldn't like that too much.
No. And liver cancer, which is the most frequent fatal outcome of hemochromatosis. In 1996, John Feeder identified the specific gene mutation, which is C282Y, that results in the malfunctioning of the mechanisms responsible for control of iron absorption. You have this gene, it screws up your DNA, and
your erections and everything else.
And it screws up how you control the iron in your blood. So the mutation is present in 85% of Caucasians with hemochromatosis. So it allows for the screening of people at risk for developing hemochromatosis. So almost everybody that has hemochromatosis has this mutation. So it's really, if you have that mutation, you have hemochromatosis. Among Celts, the incidence of the mutation is 1 in 8 to 10 people.
Wow, that's pretty high.
Among Irish Celts, it is 1 in 3 to 5 people.
Laura, that just shows how much more Irish you are than me. And clearly my Italian genes have come out.
Yeah.
Because I don't have it.
No, you don't.
Italians are better.
1 in 3 to 5 people have the mutation. It appears to have originated in a Celtic or Viking ancestor 2 to 4,000 years ago and spread through migration. You know, they came down and so did the disease through Europe and Scandinavia. The high incidence in Celts in Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Brittany is due to the Vikings' invasions in those areas. So they were constantly invaded by Vikings. They brought that mutation, and all of their children then had it. And the isolation of the island-based countries kept it in those countries.
All the inbreeding and shit.
Right. So it wasn't like in mainland. It was on all the islands that the Vikings were going to. So it was kind of like it kept it going.
Those Vikings.
I know. So back to the plague. Ireland had a very different diet than the rest of Europe. Like you said, they were
potatoes.
They lived on potatoes.
I want some potatoes.
They were malnourished, so they had low iron levels. They also drank a lot of tea.
Oh, the tea.
The tannins in the tea inhibits the absorption of iron. So they had super low iron.
Maybe that's why I'm anemic.
Maybe. Super low iron levels. People without the gene would have died at higher rates, since if you had the gene, you would have had higher iron to begin with. So you could have lived with having a little starvation or a little vitamin deficiency because you had all this iron stored in you.
Interesting.
So if you didn't have it, you were dying. So this left, the survivors were the people with the gene. So then all of these people have this gene in this mutation. So then it comes to the U.S., it comes to Australia, because these are the people that are surviving. They're the ones leaving. They actually use the gene to track the immigration of Irish people around the world.
Wow.
Like they can see, like, oh yeah, a ton of them went here, a ton of them went here.
Hemochromatosis here, hemochromatosis.
There's little pockets of hemochromatosis.
Sprinkle of it everywhere.
Yeah.
Those Irish. They had a little flavor everywhere they went.
So hemochromatosis usually affects men age 40 and up, and women age 60 and up. So
you get some time.
Yeah. So it affects you later in life because it takes a while to store it up. Like it's storing up all those years, and then you get bad results from it. And women are older because we have our menstrual cycles, and we're giving, we're childbearing age. So we bloodlet ourselves. So then when you get into menopause, or if you have a hysterectomy, then you have to start worrying about it. The signs and symptoms of it are abdominal pain, arthritic pain, fatigue, lethargy, decreased hormone production. That's when the libido comes in. You get iron fist, which is pain in the pointer and middle finger joints.
Dirty.
I know.
I'm going to give you the iron fist.
Yep. They check it by, obviously now we do a genetic test that you can, if you have it, you have it. My mother has like 40-something first cousins, big Irish family. And one of them found out they had him. I don't know why they found out they had it, but they found out they had it. So she called and said, like, all of you have to test this. 8,000 of us.
Have it.
So, no, but I don't know. I know a few of them do. I don't know who actually got tested or not, but I think my sister got tested first, and she found out she was a carrier. So that means my mother has to have at least part of the gene. So then my mother got tested, and when she got tested, she had it, and her levels were already at a dangerously high level.
Oh, wow.
So she had to get bloodletted.
Cousin tested.
Right. So she had to get bloodletted constantly at first.
Did they bring the leeches out, or they do it?
No, they just draw. It's like giving blood. They take a pint of blood off you, and they do it like, then they check your levels. And sometimes if it's dangerously high, like my mother's was in the beginning, she had to go like multiple times, constantly. Now she goes, I think every 2 to 3 months, and gets bloodletted. They
sounds so archaic.
I know. They will check your iron level in your blood. They'll check your transferrin saturation, which transferrin is the protein that binds with iron that transports it into your tissue. So if that's high, they know like a lot's going into your tissue. So that's really sensitive to what is in your organs, the amount of iron. And they check your ferritin level, which is the protein that binds. And, they check multiple things to see how much you're actually storing in your body. That's what they're really worried about. It's if you catch it, and now we can do the genetic testing.
You can live with it.
You can live with it. You just get bloodletted constantly, and you can stay on top of it.
Just get bloodletted. You just take fucking a couple of liters of that every month. No big deal.
So I got it. So I have it, but I didn't go.
But you haven't been leaded yet.
No, because I still have my period. But I, my mother's like, she has it, and then her doctor kept saying, okay, your daughters both got tested, right? And she's like, well, no, one of my daughters got tested.
Yeah.
My sister. She's like, my other one won't. He's like, what is she, a doctor? She goes, no, she's a nurse. He's like, oh, even worse. So he's at the hospital we work at, and he's like, listen, tell her to fill out a lab slip, put my name on it, put the orders in, have somebody draw her blood. Like, I'm ordering this test for her. Just have her do it. And like 2 or 3 years after my mother got diagnosed, I was like, Ma, I don't have it. I have low iron.
I'm fine. I'm great.
I can't even give blood anymore. It's fine. I don't even have high. I have it. So
and I'm infected.
And it's fine. But anyways, if you're from an Irish family,
go get tested.
Someone has liver disease, cirrhosis, liver cancer, if a relative, if a brother, sister, mother, aunt, uncle, just go get it, because it's not going to kill you. If you find out now,
you can fix it.
They just watch me every year. They draw those levels every year. And they said it will be after your menopausal. That will be the problem, but we'll still just...
Can I go with you for your first bloodletting?
Yeah,
please.
You can just sit there with me.
I want to just sit there and talk to you. I'll eat the cookies while you
throw away my blood.
And it'll be great.
Yeah. But anyways, that is how a lot of the Irish that survived because they had this.
Well, I'll just tell you, they're fucking something.
They are.
They are fucking survivors.
Mm-hmm.
So this St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Oh, this St. Patty's Day.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really eat corned beef. That's not really, but they actually don't even celebrate St. Patrick's Day.
I hate corned beef. You know who likes it? My Italian husband.
I would rather eat shit.
My Italian husband loves boiled dinner.
No. The boiled dinner's okay. Not my choice of food. And I'm very Italian.
I don't eat it.
I like cornbread.
Well, that's different.
I like cornbread. So eat a lot of potatoes.
You know, enjoy Irish soda bread.
Oh.
You can have Irish soda bread.
Scones. Scones with the cream. Remember when we had those? Our very first day in Ireland. So the scones with the fucking cream and the toasties.
The toasties.
Oh, the toasties were the best.
I love that.
I would make a potato leek soup. Because we had that too at the Cliffs of Moher. It's fucking fantastic. Remember that? Yeah. A little homemade bread on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you, people complain about the food in Ireland.
It was delicious.
Couldn't get enough of it.
It was delicious. We didn't stop eating the whole time.
I literally could not get enough of it. I'm like,
so good.
This is the meat pies and the fucking steaks.
Even the stupid chips. We went to this bar when we first
potatoes.
And they had these chips. We're like, these are the best chips I've ever had.
I said, where'd you get these? She looked at me like I had 5 fucking eggs. She's like, they're potatoes. I'm like, these are the best chips I've ever had in my life.
So
the food is fantastic. So Ireland's beautiful country. Fucking love it.
Yeah, go visit.
I liked England too, but you guys are assholes at this point. I'm very tainted after this episode. So, if you've never heard of it, now you've heard of it. Yep. Investigate it, because it's quite a goddamn story.
Yes.
And we will see you in the spring.
Ooh, I can't wait.
So nice. All right, see you later. Bye.
Like, subscribe, rate, and review the Scissors and Scrubs podcast on whatever podcast app you listen to us on. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Scissors and Scrubs. And email us any of your stories or thoughts to scissorsnscrubs@gmail.com.